A very good afternoon. This will be the start of my Blood TK specific guide for Mythic Plus in 7.3. Um, we're at the end of the Tomb of Sargeras raid, and I don't think the Mythic Plus um, seasons are going to be made any differently. I think we are going to stick to the current level of difficulty that Mythic Plus has to offer. Um, I have a link to my Mythic Plus profile from Raider.io in the description of this video, and I'll go through the different talents and builds and legendaries that Blood DKs have to offer. Where I'll start is I'll start slowly going over what you would want to aim for Mythic Plus in stats and general gear. The current 4 set for Blood TK, this will be the Tomb of Sargeras 4 set, is pretty dang good. The 2 set basically gives you a permanent 2.5k versatility, and the 4 set is extremely good in Mythic Plus scenarios. If you start tanking higher and higher Mythic Pluses, you will start to notice that you'll get runic starved more often than not. So my regular combination, I'm currently wearing the Acaris Drapes as it is a necrotic week, but I'm currently still in combat. Give me 1 second to move away from this target dummy. My current equip. My current set uses Cephas' Secret and the Blood Bracers. Blood Bracers are just extremely good because in Mythic Plus you will always heal yourself for more than 10% of your health, so you can always proc the effect that the shackles have. I use Cephas' Secret because it is extremely good for trash packs. It has a ton of haste and it has a ton of crit, which is the 2 stats that you will want to go for in Mythic Plus, especially because crit just improves your damage done, and haste gives you just more runes. The shackles plus the DK4 set plus you'll want to aim for about 30% haste. All those 3 things put together are going to make your life much easier. Other than that, the regular gear is not as interesting. You'll want to go for 4 set these 2 legendaries. If you have the blood chest, I currently have my best tier in this chest piece, which is why I don't use it. If you have the blood chest is actually really strong for Mythic Plus trash, as it will just ramp up the damage that you do. If you have a Prydas is actually really good for boss fights. So if you get into a situation where you know that you cannot proc Cephas, I highly suggest using Prydas and the bracers instead. So Cephas on trash, Prydas on bosses. Other than that, you can see that I'm slightly under haste cap. There's just no way with my current gear setup that I can get more haste. I've already got max haste neck and max haste rings. I actually have a 930 haste ring in my bag as well, but the Prydas proc is just better. I do, however, have a 920 Chrono Shard. Chrono Shard is actually really good because the haste proc that you get will just bump up your haste that much more. So if, like me, you are under the under the haste cap, then the Chrono Shard effect, as soon as you get it to proc, I'll go up to about 51% haste. Sorry, 31% haste, which is pretty good. Then for trinkets, generally just stat stick trinkets are really good. For Mythic Plus, you'll want to search for Strength Haste or Strength Crit, followed by unused trinkets. A couple of unused trinkets that are really good are the Emerald Moonglaves. I use Moonglaves in almost every single Mythic Plus I do. I sometimes don't even bother to swap it out for boss fights because the 1300 versatility is just really quite good. And the effect, if you pull two big packs together and you use Moonglaves, you can easily go up to like 2.5 million DPS even as a tank, which helps out the group a lot. If you do that 5 or 6 times throughout a dungeon, you can easily do like, let's say, 150 million damage with just the Moonglaive effect. One of the other trinkets that's really quite sick for Blood DK tanking in Mythic Plus itself trinket is the caster trinket from Desolate Host. The effect from this trinket is really quite good. So if you are tanking, let's say, a fortified week, and you have been able to get your hands on a Spectral Thurible, I highly suggest using it. The effect, it procs a lot because it procs it. The wording says ranged attacks and spells, but it procs a lot off of Blood Boil as well. Any defensive shield trinkets are generally good if you find yourself in a situation where you will often need some more health. For example, Rattling Quarry of the Damned is really quite good. It gives you a ton of health and a good on-use effect. But generally, you'll want to go for the more stat stick approach. Memento of Angerboda is also pretty good. It's also the same stat stick approach. Then that is where I'll shortly end up with gear. If you go to talents, there's 2 types of ways that you can talent for the Mythic Plus. It all depends on how you're going up, like what type of leveler you are going to do. Officially, Blood Drinker is the single best DPS increase for Mythic Plus. Heartbreaker is also very good in situations where you find yourself with a lot of without a lot of runic power. So if you want to create more runic power, you'll want to go into Heartbreaker. I personally am a big fan of Bloodworms. Bloodworms do a little bit of damage, but the way that they are that Bloodworms is worded is that if you drop below 50% health here at the end, right there at the end, your Bloodworms will immediately burst and heal you. Now I tend to tank slightly higher Mythic Plus, so when I use all my cooldowns, I can save up a couple of Bloodworms, and then if I have, let's say, maybe 2 of them active, I can just take a big swing from a boss, or I can just spend a little bit of time just building up runic power instead of healing myself. Because I have that backup of the possibly 2 or maybe even 3 Bloodworms that can explode as soon as I go below 50. Bloodworms is really quite good if I say so myself. However, for any fortified week, I would definitely swap over to Heartbreaker. Heartbreaker in fortified weeks is really good because you can still pull decent amounts, and the trash will just live for so much longer. So Heartbreaker can be used so much more. So for general weeks, I would spec into Bloodworms. For fortified weeks, I would let's say for fortified high level Mythic Plus, anything 15 or 16 over, I would use Heartbreaker instead. Tier 2, we have rapid decomposition, we have hard of ice, and we have spectral deflection. Um, one of these three is not like the other because one of these three is really bad. Hard of ice is really, really, really bad. You will never really be in a situation where you need, let's say, 10 or 12 seconds of icebound instead of 8. Because icebound itself isn't that good, reducing all damage taken by 30%. If you know that you are going to be in a situation where you will need to have icebound up for over 10 seconds, then spec into Rune Tap instead. Just the lack of it's just generally a worse effect than composition and deflection. Generally, I will be in rapid decomposition. Although there are a couple of dungeons where I would go for deflection. And one example that I could give is the first boss in Mars Souls. The first boss in Mars Souls hits like an absolute truck. And if you don't have a group that can help you deal with it, and let's say you're pugging, you're not on Discord, you're not on any other voice chat as well, and you need to survive that boss yourself, the boss can easily one-shot you with his Dark Slash ability, but with Spectral Deflection up and a couple of other cooldowns, you can help save yourself much more often. Deflection is very good for situations where you can reliably expect an attack to deal more than 25 of your max health. In any other case, rapid decomposition is the way to go. It increases your death and decay damage, which increases your damage on AoE trash, and you generate a little bit of runic power, and runic power is really good. Then this next tier, Ossuary is just the way to go. You should always have more than 5 bone shield charges, and having a lot of runic power is good, because then that means that you can pool up more runic power more often. But also reducing the cost of Death Strike is really good, because Ossuary, together with the DK4 set and Shackles of Brindaur, the combination of those three just makes it so that you can Death Strike a ridiculous amount of times. Regularly, Death Strike would be, I think, 45 runic power, and then as soon as you would Blood Boil, it will go to 40 runic power. I think I have to hit something with Blood Boil to get the Grave Warden buff. But yeah, it will go to 40 runic power, then with Ossuary it'll go to 35 runic power, and then you'll even get 15% of that runic power back, which just amounts in a lot of resources. Blood Tap is really bad, although Blood Tap does synergize with Spectral Deflection, as you will be way more focused on getting Bone Shield charges, and then that will lower the cooldown on Blood Tap as well. And I'm sure that there's a macro to be made that if you have fewer than this many runes, use Blood Tap, but it's not something that I've pursued myself. And anti-magic barriers is really bad. There's no situation where you would want to increase your maximum health by 25%, or no real situation that I can think of. Whereas Ossuary just gives you, like, let's say over a 30 or a 40 minute run, Ossuary can give you hundreds of runic power. Row 60, we have Mark of Blood, Red Thirst, and Tombstone. One of these three is not like the other, just like I said before, because one of these three isn't bad. Red Thirst is really, really good. The other two, there's no situation where you would want to take either of these two instead of Red Thirst. 75, we have Tightening Grasp, Tremble Before Me, and March of the Damned. Tightening Grasp is what I'm currently using, as we are currently in a necrotic week, and the second part of the effect, where Death and Decay reduces the movement speed of enemies within its radius by 70%. That's really good, so that you can pop a Death and Decay underneath your feet and run away to reset your necrotic stacks. However, currently, usually I would be spec'd into Tremble Before Me. Tremble Before Me procs Cephalus' Secret, which means that you can proc it on cooldown. Tremble Before Me also stops people from casting, and it stops people from casting uninterruptible casts as well. For example, if you would pull a big group in Halls of Valor, then you don't always have enough interrupts to interrupt every single cast. Tremble Before Me helps with that, because it does help interrupting those ads as well. March of the Damned should never really be taken. There's almost no situation other than Mythic Goroth that I would consider using March of the Damned in. And even in Mythic Goroth, it's probably the best talent, because the other two don't do anything in boss fights. But this is a guide based around Mythic Plus, so I would say never pick March of the Damned. Next row, 90 row, we have Fall Bulwark, Rune Tap, and Will of the Necropolis. Will of the Necropolis. One of the things that you could do if you are doing very high keys is that you could use Soul of the Deathlord, which allows you to spec into Rune Tap and use Fall Bulwark as well, because you get it from the ring itself. I don't feel like I often get put in that situation where I would actively need the 10% extra health. Also, because on very high tyrannical keys, I will very often be spec'd into Spectral Deflection, which lowers the amount of bone shield charges that I have, which has anti-synergy with Fall Bulwark. I am myself. I'm a huge fan of Rune Tap because it allows you to pull a very big pack and only take really 60% damage for the first 6 seconds, because you could chain 2 Rune Taps one after another. DKs are also incredibly bad the first 3 seconds of the fight, because we have to build up runing power, we have to build up bone shield charges, and that just takes a little while. So if you do if you like doing big pulls and you want to go fast, then Rune Tap allows you to do that big pull and then not be a wet paper bag while you're running and while you haven't set up your bone shield charges yet. Whereas Fall Bulwark doesn't really do that. If you are doing lower Mythic Plus, where you never get into the position where you might get one shot, Fall Bulwark is definitely the way to go. Will of the Necropolis is something that you should never really take over the other two, because generally the way that blood decays work is that if you are below 35% health, you are generally going to heal yourself up to full with just one death strike. Blood decays are the worst tanks to heal for healers because our health yo-yos so much. We go up from 100% to 30%, back to 100%, back to 30%. It's not very uncommon on high tyrannical keys to see a blood decay out heal the healer, and it's definitely not very uncommon on high fortified keys where you pull a big pack to have your blood decay sat at, let's say, 1.5 million HPS and your regular healer just at 500k. Speaking in 7.3 terms, of course. So, well, like you'll never really be under 35% health a lot. Um, Whereas there are some abilities, again like the Dark Slash from the first boss in Maw Souls, where Rune Tap is an absolute lifesaver. He hits Dark Slash, you just Rune Tap once, um, and over a 3-minute fight, maybe 2.5-minute fight, it means that you will never really run out of cooldowns because you could Rune Tap the first one, AMS the second one, Rune Tap the third one, Vamp Blood the fourth one, Icebound the fifth one, Rune Tap the sixth one, Anti-Magic Shell the seventh one, Vamp Blood the eighth one, etc, etc. You'll never run out of cooldowns if you run Rune Tap. If you get put in situations where you often take that much damage. Then, depending on your gear and on the level of difficulty of Mythic Plus that you run, but also depending on how comfortable you feel with your group, the level 100 talent is going to be either Bone Storm or Purgatory. Very rarely would you be in a situation where Blood Mirror is better than Bone Storm, because Mythic Plus is mostly built around around the trash, and not necessarily around the bosses. And Bone Storm does a lot of damage on trash. It does a lot of damage on trash. If you manage to build up 100 runic power, and then pull a big pack with Bone Storm active, you're most likely not going to ever die, and you are probably going to do millions of DPS with Bone Storm. However, then my counter argument is always, but what if you die once? And then you think about it, and then you think, what if you die once? If you end up dying once, and you do not have Purgatory, then most likely your party is going to have a full wipe. Because if you get put in a situation where you as the Blood DK tank, die, that means that you are in a situation bad enough that that exact thing is going to wipe your entire party. Because if it can wipe you, it'll wipe your party. Even if you get a Battle Res off, and Battle Reses are the absolute worst thing for Blood DK tanks. And even if you get a Battle Res off, you still might not be in a situation where you can pick up all the ads and still survive. In my experience, if you die once, you are going to die again if you do get Battle Resed. I have a very interesting Cathedral 20 key where I ended up dying about 3 times on the first boss before we and then we killed it. So we had to waste 3 Battle Reses on me. Because the way that Blood DKs work is that we first have to build up a little bit, we have to build up our runic power, we have to build up our bone shield charges, and then we can think about trying to survive. And Purgatory gives you that option. It gives you that option of, instead of dying and wiping, of dying and maintaining your runic power, maintaining your bone shield charges. It is an extra battle res on yourself, but then better than a battle res. Because if you do get battle resed and you have no runic power, and you need to take back the boss, and the boss just hits you again, and you go back down, then that'll make you pretty sad. But if you do proc Purgatory, and you put yourself in a situation where you can heal yourself back up, while maintaining all your bone shield charges and maintaining all your runic power, then that can save your run about a minute or 2. Because you have to take into account that every single death is 5 seconds, a full party wipe is 25 seconds. Having then to eat back up with your full party is 35 seconds. Having to then also run back, depending where you have died, running back can be anything between like what, maybe 10 seconds and a minute. If you die in like without purgatory in lower Karazhan, that might take you like that might just take 2 minutes off your run. So yes, the Bone Storm is better if you don't proc Purgatory. If you proc Purgatory even once in a full run, Purgatory's been worth it in my opinion. That has been the talents. What differences would I make from my regular build? And my regular builds would be this, with Tremble before me. For what affixes? Necrotic weeks, I would take Tightening Grasp, because the 70% slow is ridiculously good if you want to reset your own stacks. If I'm just running lower keys with friends or guildies where it doesn't really matter if we make the time, we just want to go fast, I will go Bone Storm over Purgatory. Because for my gear level, let's say anything 11 or below, I can pull ridiculous amounts and not really worry about having to die. And then Bone Storm is just ridiculously good. But I would build myself around content that is challenging for me, and content that is challenging for me is content where I could die. Therefore, Purgatory is the way to go for me. I would always pick Rune Tap over Fall Bulwark, instead of except for a couple of bosses in a couple of dungeons, but then I would still take Rune Tap because you have to take into account the entire dungeon and not just that one boss, because you can't just go in for one boss. So Rune Tap would be my personal way to go if you're doing challenging content challenging enough. Red Thirst is always just Red Thirst. Ossuary is always just Ossuary. Then I have talked about this earlier. Spectral Deflection is something I would pick for very high tyrannical keys, keeping in mind that the first boss in Vault of the Wardens hits like a truck. First boss in Moss Souls hits like a truck. Let's see what other dungeons hit like trucks. Final boss in Eye of Ishara hits like a truck. First boss in Cathedral hits like a truck. Second boss in Blackrock Hold hits like a truck. Third boss in Blackrock Hold hits like a truck. The tree in Darkheart Thicket hits like a truck. The first boss in Halls hits like a truck. I would not use it in Archway. I would not use it in upper or lower. I would not use it in Neltslayer. And I would not use it in Thicket. So it's kind of a 50-50. It's kind of a 50-50. Then for any fortified key ever, I would pick Decomposition over Deflection. And then for your tier 1 talent, I would always use Bloodworms, unless I go into a high fortified key, in which I will use Heartbreaker, because the ads just live for so long that Heartbreaker can give you massive amounts of extra runic power. That's basically it. That's what I think you need to know if you want to start tanking more challenging content within the little Mythic Plus world. Again, the link to my Raider.io is in the comment, not in the comment section, is in the description below. And if there are any questions that you would like to ask me, you can ask them to talktoleander@gmail.com. Thank you very much, and I will see you all later.